Alrighty, we got a special one tonight. Lucas Wencl hanging out with you all, joined by best ball extraordinaire, Pete Overzet. Pete, appreciate you hopping on, man. If you have not seen any of Pete's content before, I'm just convinced you're not on social media. Pete's everywhere on Twitter. He's streaming Monday, Best Ball Breakfast, literally 4-hour stream every morning. You got the Swolecast. You're on Chip Chase. I mean, there are so many places you are, Pete. So again, appreciate you taking the time to join us here. Where can the people find your work?
Yeah, man. Busy time of year with all the drafts. Yeah, a few main places. I would say for video stuff, my YouTube channel where I do the live streams that you mentioned. And then I also have another YouTube channel called The Deposit Kingdom. That's for produced videos. So I've been trying to do more strategy videos, some more edited stuff over there. And then I do a bunch of writing for Fantasy Life. I write the daily newsletter over there, been doing some strategy pieces. So those are the best spots to find me.
Yeah, and what I love about your best ball content too, Pete, because that's your main focus. Your best ball content is accessible if you are in the streets every single day. If you are brand new to best ball, if you are like me, where it's like, all right, best ball. My intro to best ball was last year, but we're really getting serious with it this year. The content that you put out is quite literally accessible for everybody. So, and you have fun along the way. That might be the most important thing.
I appreciate that. I do think it's a tough balance because there are a lot of people who are very deep in the weeds on this stuff. Like a lot of stuff we're going to say or stuff you talk about, they already know. And so,
Right.
but you also don't want to take for granted the people that don't. And I'm constantly reminded of it. I'll get asked questions like, what did you mean by this kind of correlation or whatever? And it's like things that are normal, verbiage or whatever for us are maybe these esoteric terms to other people. So it is, you want to balance that because you want the sickos to enjoy stuff
Right.
too, but you also want to make best ball fun because there are a lot of redraft players who are scared of best ball. It's this weird, intimidating thing. And it's like, it actually shouldn't be. It's actually
No.
more easy. It's less, to worry about. We're obviously trying to extract every micro edge, but yeah, plenty of room in the best ball streets for everyone.
Especially when you're on a platform like Underdog that's giving away millions upon millions upon millions with, you can enter as many contests as you want, and unless if it's a corgi or where they restrict your entries. But I mean, they have so many different ways to play. There is something for everybody. Whether your budget is I got $25 to throw in this month, or if you are someone who is looking to get a bit more serious in the best ball streets, put some more skin in the game, if you will. I mean, there's all sorts of contests. You see the Mastiff, $1,000 entry. There is something for everybody, and so that is the beauty of best ball. That is the beauty of what I believe is behind your content is it's accessible. If we want it to be fun, we want to take it seriously because there is a lot on the line. But sometimes if we take fantasy football too seriously, we might be doing something wrong about a fake sport and a fake game that we all love to obsess about. Nick, appreciate you hopping in the chat, man. Joel, good to see you. Connor as well. Cameron, I'm going to disregard your comment because we talk every week. Pete, we're going to dive on in. We will do Best Ball Mania 5 draft here. Now, I will give a massive disclaimer to you. I don't know how superstitious of a person you are, but every time I have joined a draft on a live where I have been wearing my nice Underdog Hawaiian shirt and my fella's hat, we have not drafted earlier than the 10th overall pick, which is
Really?
Look, I'm not that superstitious, but I had Dave Kluge on last week. We drafted right at the turn 112. I drafted with Ron Stewart back in June. We drafted at the 111. So I'm just convinced it's just some crazy voodoo at this point. I'm hoping this is the night we break that streak because I can only draft from the turn so many times before I think I'm going to become psychotic.
Yeah, I like drafting. Everyone has their spots. I have my slight preferences. I'm with you in that I don't like drafting in the same spot over and over. I just like variety. And so even if I'm getting a bunch of early slots, do I like that? Yeah, but then I am like, man, I haven't gotten to take AJ Brown in about 3 weeks. It would be nice to have a late slot here.
Right. Well, and as much as you want to mix up your exposures, you don't want to go, hey, look at that. Broke the streak. 104.
What's your username?
Okay. FFLas. Gotcha. Yep. 104. Yep.
There you go. That's a nice spot.
That's a wonderful spot. I will admit though, the consensus top 3 this year seems to be McCaffrey, Tyreek, CD. I admittedly have not been mixing up my shares there. I am so overweight on Justin Jefferson this year, mostly because I'm just in love with that week 15 to 17 quad. That's Minnesota, Chicago, Seattle, Green Bay.
Mhm.
So easy to stack from that spot too.
Oh yeah, yeah. The between Seattle and Chicago specific, it's just like there's a player at basically every portion of the draft. So yeah, I get a ton of that quad as well. And Justin Jefferson has ended up being not necessarily because I mean, I am excited about Justin Jefferson. I think he's a great pick, but I've just ended up with so many 1.5 and 1.6s. And then when everyone was taking Amon-Ra ahead of Jefferson early on, that was when I had all my 1.6s, and then they
Yep.
kept giving me Jefferson there. So, but yeah, I generally take Jamar Chase at 1.4, but I think they're both good picks.
Should that be the case, I'm totally fine. Oh, Jefferson goes ahead.
Oh wow, you got sniped on your guy.
Yeah. On my guy. Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase. Is your preference Tyreek Hill? That's where mine lies.
Yeah. I'm kind of boring in the first round. I mean, I have some slight stands like I kind of prefer Garrett Wilson and Puka to AJ Brown, which is why I ended up light there. I did prefer, Justin Jefferson to Amon-Ra, although now the market is back in line. But yeah, I don't really deviate from ADP too much in the first round. I'd basically just like to have a bunch of all of these guys. So I try not to get too cute.
Yeah. So when is that point when you start deviating from ADP? Because I think there's a case where if we're new to best ball, the most common thing we hear people talk about, right, is the week 15, 16, and most importantly week 17 stacks, right? That's where all the money is won. But we don't want to over prioritize that and reach on ADP just to get those stacks. So when is that you start to deviate a little bit from ADP typically?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is kind of two spots you would deviate from ADP. And again, for when people say like, why do you care about ADP? It's because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of drafts that are informing this ADP. People doing these drafts have skin in the game. They're not just going on a Yahoo mock draft and screwing around. So this gets us, at the very least, you have to agree this is like directionally accurate how we're ordering these players. Are there always going to be, is it going to be perfect? No, but it is a pretty good representation of how these players should be valued. The two places I would mix it up are when you think players are in an even tier. And I think a really good example of this is round 2. Like all of these wide receivers, if you want to pound the table for Deebo Samuel to go as the first player in round 2, if you want to pound the table for even Malik Neighbors to go in round 2 where Marvin Harrison, like I'm listening to all that. I think this is a flat tier. That's a spot I think you could jumble it up. The other spot that is from historical data that after pick 140, 145, ADP is no longer a predictor of fantasy performance. It's basically like the Wild West. So if you're in round 14 and you want to grab a guy in round 17, everyone might be like, oh, you're reaching 3 rounds. And it's like, it doesn't matter because the round 14 guys have a similar chance of hitting as the round 17. So if you're saying like, hey, I want to take Yoshi Vaz because he's having a great camp. And I also like Will Shipley. And these guys are all round 18 picks. And I want to start taking them early. That's not bad because you're not sacrificing value in the way if we took, Hollywood Brown here in the second round because we think he's going to have an awesome year. It'd be like, no, the data shows us that year over year, if we're making that big of a reach, we're going to build subpar teams.
And that's a point of the year we're starting to get to now, especially in the 14th round, right? Where it's a lot of these guys getting hype out of camp where we're going to start to see their ADP shoot up. And I mean, you even posted a screenshot earlier today of like, look at how gross we're getting. Like in like round 18 is a whole different animal, right? Like that is the true scroll the F down territory. But I mean, people are starting to take their guys earlier and earlier as we're on the clock here. Where's your leaning here? My typical preference is strong wide receiver starts. You kind of deemed it the wide receiver avalanche. I also see Devon Achane here with Tyreek Hill, and I can't help but think about a Miami Dolphins mega stack as we got 10 seconds.
Yeah, I definitely love the Achane and Tyreek pairing. I don't love the Waddle in
I agree.
Tyreek pairing as much. We saw how those guys are kind of slightly negative correlated in a single game. I think it works over the season. Like if Tua stays healthy and the Dolphins are awesome, you would love having both those wide receivers. But when you get in those pod dynamics and you're trying to finish first out of 16, it's more likely that one of Tyreek or Waddle is going off for 40 and the other's having a so-so game. Whereas what did we see week after week last year? It was one Miami wide receiver and one Miami running back going nuclear. So whether it's Achane and Hill, Mostert and Waddle, however you want to mix and match those, I'm very pro running back wide receiver pairings on the Dolphins specifically.
Well, and especially when you can get the two guys who are maybe most likely to do that this year as well. I mean, it's the two guys that when you look at them, you say you both could go for 40 this week and score half of my fantasy points this week and lead me to a win. So I am all for that as well. You mentioned this round 2 tier kind of being a flat tier. How far does that leak into round 3 for you as well? Because I mean, you brought up Malik Neighbors, who's we might be looking at here as the wide receiver 20. How long does this flat tier go, especially as we're considering our next pick?
Yeah, for me, it extends a little bit further. I think this Diggs slide is kind of weird to me. Like I include Diggs up here with Cup and Neighbors and Metcalf and Devontae. And I think DJ Moore too. Like I think you can make the case. So yeah, it extends, middle of round 3 for me. While I do love, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, T Higgins, I think there's like a kind of a tier break there. Whereas like I would never, like if you told me I'm taking Tank Dell at the 1-2 turn, I'd be like, all right, I think that might be a little too much. But if you told me you were taking Malik Neighbors or Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs, I'm like, I can see it.
Yeah. You have a preference of these 3 wide receivers: Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Malik Neighbors. I mean, even if you want to scroll down and take DJ Moore, Diggs.
I like Devonta Smith partly because there's been some pretty big Jalen Hurts falls. Sometimes the AJ Brown drafter will pass on them, and then people just don't really want to take naked Jalen Hurts. I've noticed I don't see this as a big badge room, so sometimes people will go rogue and still grab him on stack, but because I think he's the best ADP value here and it gives us a chance at a Hurts stack, I kind of like it.
You are speaking my language. I've been working with this idea this summer of I'm wondering, and I saw a question pop in here earlier. Anthony popped in with a Kyler Murray later, Anthony Richardson early. I I seriously wonder if we're overthinking elite quarterback, and is it really just like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts versus the field? Like if I can just grab one of those two guys, I'm almost confident I'm going to get a top 3 quarterback no matter what. And I think you can make an anti case for almost any other guy going after those two. What's your process on elite tight end? Are you how often are you mixing on those middle round guys, or are you really targeting the top 3, the Josh Allen, the Jalen Hurts, the Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I struggle with the elite quarterback. I understand that they're priced down to where they have been, but the opportunity cost in that range is so high to me because I really like the elite tight ends. I'm really warming up to trying to get more of ETN and Pacheco as well. And so I always think about my teams, and I do the 2v2s and the 3v3s. And I tend to like my teams better when I'm passing on the elite quarterbacks. The other thing about it too is I really like having 3 quarterbacks because of, again, the pod dynamics and getting the multiple stacks. Mike Leone's manifesto data has showed that when you have 3 quarterbacks and they're all stacked, it gives you the best chance of not only increasing your EV through the playoff rounds, but in the final round as well, because it's basically just saying, now I have access to 3 game environments, 3 different stacks that could be unique. And so I gravitate to that a lot. I think the thing I think about though is it's dependent on kind of who I start with. Like on this team, Tua is definitely a screaming candidate for us.
Yep.
But I'm very open to Jalen Hurts on this specific build. But I just don't like taking the Josh Allen and then feeling like, oh man, if I miss on Kincaid, then I'm having to reach for these wide receivers. I don't know. Just, for me personally, it never feels great. But I will say, like in a vacuum, I think they're strong values where they're going.
The difficult thing about Josh Allen is we know he's going to get there. The problem is we don't know which weapon entirely outside of Kincaid is going to be. And we're looking at these tight ends. Kincaid's often gone by the middle of the 5th round because we start to see as Sam Laporte is close to the middle of the 3rd, Travis Kelce early 4th, as there goes Jalen Hurts. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me where within the rest of the round we see the likes of Mark Andrews, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid all go off the board, and you're sitting there with Josh Allen. wondering, okay,
Right.
can I get a Keon Coleman? Do I even like Keon Coleman? Curtis Samuel, what's his upside? He's he's going to be elite, but the problem is if you're going to game stack and just flat out stack in general, you don't know which you're kind of grabbing whatever piece is most convenient, which doesn't instill a ton of confidence, I feel like, as well.
That dig slide that just happened was insane.
That's
I was just
insane.
saying digs at 43 should not happen. What are we doing here, people?
I'm hoping that means we have a successful rest of the draft if we get some slides like that. So Higgins top of the board. Got two elite tight ends staring us in the face too.
Yeah, I know. You could maybe do the Mark Andrews and see if Lamar comes around. I have no problem with Pickens or Higgins. I kind of slightly prefer Higgins, but Pickens is the ADP value. And I also love McBride, so I know I'm not helping you out too much here. I mix up this range a lot.
I love McBride this year as well, and I know you had on the Deposit Kingdom. You had mentioned he was the best value in the 4th round. You had mentioned as well. You want to give a little bit of context behind that as well, which you kind of mentioned in that video for that case?
Yeah, I had made another video this year. Elite tight end I think is going to be the dominant strategy this year. We haven't had a pool of tight ends like this in a while. I think it goes 7 deep. If you think it goes a little further because you like Ingram or Jake Ferguson, like I'm not gonna argue with you. The point is what it allows you to do structurally, and opposed to quarterbacks, where I actually feel like I like a lot of the late quarterbacks and can build strong late 3 QB teams. I do not like a lot of the late tight ends. So I really want to only be having to take 2 tight ends in most of my drafts, and getting a guy, an elite tight end in general, allows me to accomplish that. So it's basically freeing up an extra roster spot. And then on top of it, what they can do for you in the playoff pods is so massive. And we've seen it year after year. It was, 3 years ago, Mark Andrews went nuts. Every single team, you basically had to have him to make the BBM2 finals. Then it was George Kittle, the year Karain won. You basically had to have him that year. And then last year, it wasn't an elite tight end. It was Sam Laporta, who became an elite tight end. But it still illustrates the point of the tight end who is capable of going for 25 plus, which is what Sam Laporta did in week 14 last year. He was on the majority of the playoff teams. And so it really is this near skeleton key thing where if one of these elite tight ends has a spike week in the playoffs, you are going to need them at whatever juncture in the playoffs that is happening. And so I want to be taking stabs on them. I view it like elite running backs, where it's like, yes, a lot of them will bust, a lot of them will get hurt, but if you hit on that legendary season, you will be very happy. I love this T. Higgins dip here.
Yep, I am scooping all of it up. Golly, as a wide receiver 3, I will take T. Higgins every single day. My goodness, yeah, that is a 10 pick, almost a full round slide there on T. Higgins. I think that's one thing too that I've appreciated in your approach as someone who, again, is growing deeper into becoming a best ball bro. I last year I could tell I was so prone. I'm like, okay, week 17, this is the this is the strategy I need to make sure I implement. But you've been a huge proponent of why are we yes, we need to draft as if the Miami Dolphins and Cleveland Browns week 17 game is going to pop off. But if you're forcing that right away, you're limiting the options on your team. So I love that your approach this year has been let's scoop up value where we can get value. We'll worry about the details of this team later.
For instance,
a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Where did Amari Cooper go in this? Did he go at the 3-4 turn? I don't even see him on the board.
Golly, yeah. Let me scroll. I have to scroll up then.
Okay. He went in the 3rd round.
3-4. Yep.
Yeah. So like an example. So we took 2 Dolphins. Like, yes, I care about our week 17 matchup. I care about even our week 16 matchup against the Niners. But it's like, am I going to reach for, are we going to take Amari Cooper over Devontae Smith in the 3rd because they play together? No. And the way that I always think about it is I want to think about correlation more and more as the draft progresses. So basically each round, I'm going to start thinking about it progressively more. I barely even thought about it through these 4 rounds. I actually didn't think about it at all. I was like, who's the value here? Oh, T. Higgins slide. Oh, I wish the dig slide would have happened. And then because my thought is all these players we're taking right now, we know who these players are. They can go off in any game environment. T. Higgins can go off for 2 touchdowns against any defense. Trey McGronk can go wild. Obviously, Hill and Achane. They don't need correlation to succeed. When we get in the late rounds and I look at a player like Jalen Tolbert on the Cowboys, I'm just throwing out a random example.
Yep.
Like, in what world is he going for 100 yards in 2 tutties? Like, he's not doing that unless a
No.
Dallas Cowboys game goes insane. And guess what? If it goes insane, could that happen for a guy like Tolbert? Sure. So that's when I'm saying, if Tolbert's having a nuclear game, it's probably in a game with my other players, and I'm going to need them all to have this crazy game together. And so that's really where I think about it when we get much further along in the draft.
And I think the other thing too is, I mean, with a T Higgins specifically, you all of a sudden just open up an opportunity for a late round stack instead of forcing yourself into drafting a Deshaun Watson or forcing yourself into drafting a Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, if you need to grab, again, we just talked about 3 quarterback builds. If we need to grab a Bo Nix and Roy Franklin, God forbid, like there's accessibility to that as well, because we didn't lock ourselves into one specific game stack or 2 specific game stacks.
Man, man, every single round there's one huge faller. Like, if they're going to give us
man.
Anthony Richardson here, I mean, yeah, let's do it.
This is where, again, as I was processing through the whole elite quarterback thing earlier, I like these quarterbacks almost gain value the further they fall down the board. If you're gonna give me Anthony Richardson tail into the 6th, I mean, that is a no-brainer for a guy who legitimately could be in that Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen range this year. Like, that is within his range of outcomes this year.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a lot of people, talk about, do I need to reach to get these unique combinations? Or I don't, if I'm always drafting off of ADP, I'm getting the same guys. We're getting a really unique team by not reaching. Like, even think about this, like Tyreek Hill goes at 1-3 most of the time. Achane goes early or late 2nd, early 3rd. And Anthony Richardson is almost always on the other side of the board at the 5-6 turn. The only ways you get Anthony Richardson, I actually did this in a video with Jacob Sanderson, where we took him early 5th, specifically to pair with Malik Neighbors, who has that week 17 correlation with him. So that was a specific reach. But there are not going to be many teams at all that have Tyreek Hill and Anthony Richardson on them, unless you're really reaching for him in the 5th round, which could you do that? Sure. But that's not going to happen naturally by drafting off of ADP. So, on top of that, the people who do have Anthony Richardson there, they took him in the 5th. We just got him in the 6th on that same side of the board, which means we were able to sneak in an extra pick, which also happened to be a huge ADP value. So to me, it's like we just built a really unique team specifically through ADP values and didn't have to sacrifice anything.
We're getting a little bit closer to ADP here. I mean, guys, DeAndre Hopkins a little bit past ADP. If we are looking to stack Trey McBride at all, Kyler Murray's in this range. You got a pulse on what direction you want to head?
I would either do Hopkins or Brian Thomas and get us a 4th wide receiver here.
Let's go ahead and do D-Hop. I need to up my exposure there a little bit. And frankly, I'm still a believer in D-Hop this year for a guy who has been drawing a 27% target share over the last few years. That'll obviously go down with Ridley, but for a guy who has commanded targets throughout the course of his career, to get him as the wide receiver 40 in a Brian Callahan offense, that's been one of the most pass-happy offenses in the NFL in Cincinnati. I mean, I find it hard to believe that the DeAndre Hopkins downfall is going to be because of Will Levis, not because of the offense that not because of the offensive structure that he's in.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no problem with DeAndre there. I think he's a strong pick. I think since we got Richardson and since we have lots of stack options, like I wouldn't really ever consider, reaching for Kyler. If they give us a deal on him and we get 2 quarterbacks and we're like, all right, we can be done. But yeah, I think, anecdotally, getting those 4 wide receivers through 7, and both anecdotally and what the data says, that's a very strong way to build, which gives you 3 essentially non-wide receiver picks. And we got Achane, we got our tight end, McBride, we got our quarterback, Anthony Richardson. And now we're really set up to have a lot of flexibility the rest of the draft.
Yeah, I said Kyler, and as soon as I said that, I'm like, wait, we just took Anthony Richardson. There's literally no need to take Kyler Murray there. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that 4 wide receivers through 7. I know that is something originally at the start of the offseason I saw Hayden Winks over at Underdog start to kind of flush out some more research on, of like, we got to get 5 through 10, but really you've really started to pound the table for this 4 through 7. Dive into the numbers a little bit more there of why that has proven to be most successful.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two dynamics at play. Previous BBM datas have showed that, and it's because the majority of spike weeks come from these top wide receivers that go early. This year is unique because the wide receivers are going earlier than ever. And so it's almost like an arms race. Like the best way to think about it is, when you do a super flex draft, and sometimes you're looking around the room and being like, you guys are seriously taking Derek Carr in round 3 of this draft. Like, what are we doing? Like, that's over. That's too rich. But if everyone's valuing the quarterbacks at that level, you just have to take your medicine and draft them. Otherwise, you will draft a dead team because you're taking backup quarterback. It's kind of like that at wide receiver. Like, can you wait and take Joshua Palmer and, Jacoby Myers? Sure. But like your firepower is going to be weak compared to all of those other teams. And so it's like everyone is just basically mutually agreed, hey, we're going to get all of our wide receivers early. You can join us, and then we can try to beat each other at the other positions, or you could try to swim against the current and build a suboptimal team. So it's kind of just the exceptions to me are if you can read your room, if your room is more running back heavy, if they're grabbing all the quarterbacks, maybe you can push it a little bit more. But in most of these rooms, there's kind of a window that shuts after round 7. And your mileage will vary how you feel about Keon Coleman, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton. Maybe you include those guys in there. That's fine. But in general, there's pretty big tier gaps. And the best way to think about it, and we're talking about it on off and on the clock today, is like, which of these guys can be a second round pick next year? And there's not too many after that.
I'm very confused by this lobby right now. A Brock Purdy reach when CJ Stroud is nearly 20 some picks past ADP.
Yeah.
Need another running back here, but also when is value? I know we just talked about Kyler Murray, but
yeah, I wouldn't mess. You just got to let Stroud go.
Yep.
I'm fine with any of these running backs. I probably wouldn't do Mostert unless it was a huge value. So I'd say like White, Swift, or Moss.
Yeah, let's do Zamir White. I need to cool off on Zach Moss. I was too in on Zach Moss, drafted way too much, and now Chase Brown is getting first team reps, and my heart is slightly in shambles because of it. I'll be at the the better prospect profile than Zach Moss, but I do think it'll be a backfield where both can contribute, but I don't know if both will outright way over exceed. Chase Brown has the opportunity to probably way over exceed ADP more than Zach Moss does, unless if Zach Moss is scoring, like Gus Edwards level touchdowns this year. I feel like with the combo they're kind of going with.
Yeah.
Two different.
It's funny because Chase Brown is one of my most drafted guys. I think it's come down a little bit because I did consciously switch over and I wanted to have a decent amount of Zach Moss. So I think I'm at like 25% Chase Brown and like 11 or 12% Zach Moss. I think they're both awesome picks because I think both of them can pay off their ADP as long as like a third back isn't involved. So all bets are off if they sign P. Ryan or they want to use Travion Williams or whatever. But if the backfield is just a two-headed monster, I think they'll pay it off. And then if one of them were to get hurt, then the other is just going to be a league-winning smash. So I love that. And I'm getting close to the point where I don't mind locking up the backfield with Miami. I'm also fine with Swift here.
Part of me really likes the idea of such a fragile backfield. If one guy doesn't go down, we have the other one who is most likely going to step up. I'm good with Mostert here, mostly because I do believe, and I don't want to call him discount David Montgomery. That feels a little bit too loosey goosey. But I mean, when you consider both guys are going to be used around the goal line, they both have the pass catching, more athletic running back ahead of them. Yeah, there's a world where Raheem Mostert scores another 12, 13 touchdowns this year. Is there not? Like, I don't understand. Yeah. Like, just because we don't think he's going to repeat last year, all of a sudden we're getting him in the 9th round when if a maybe younger running back with less tread on the tires, who's less injury prone, they'd probably be going in the Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, Josh Jacobs range.
For sure. And it's funny because I did do a Deposit Kingdom video, a draft video with Kyle Dvorchak maybe a month or so ago, a couple months. And his favorite Galaxy Brain idea is kind of the handcuffing of the running backs, Tang two running backs. And in our draft, we actually did an Achane Mostert. And I generally have a harder time with when one of them's really priced up. Like I've not done any Gibbs, Montgomery. I tend to like the ones like the Moss, Chase Brown, the Tony Pollard, the Tajay Spears. But it's hard to argue against something we literally just saw play out. It's like Mostert can have all of the goal line carries. Achane can have the splash plays. And both of these guys can pay off their ADP. And yes, we're having to pay a premium for HN, but we're not for Raheem Mostert. And the other thing I always say with when I take the second back, I say, I want to get a value on it. Like I don't want to reach to take both of these guys. I mean, what do we get Mostert at? Was it right at pick 100 there, which is a little bit past ADP. So I like that play for us.
And I'm just all for guys in good. It's again, sometimes we just don't need to make fantasy football hard. Take good players and good offenses that we've seen do it before. Like sometimes we just don't need to overcomplicate it. I did see one comment roll through here as we have a little bit of time for the next pick here. Caleb Nemi, Pete, one of the funniest guys in the space. How do you mix content with being? You and I chatted a little bit before you came on. It's like, all right, we got to prioritize family time, but can mix in a late night stream. How do you actually balance that dynamic as someone who is also a married man doing a stream at 8 p.m. Central time? How do you mix that in?
Yeah, man, it's tough. There's some things I'm kind of non-negotiable about, at 4:30 or so every day until 8 p.m. when she's down. Like that is time that I'm with the family. Saturdays, always a family day. So those things like I just have carved out. And then the other thing for me, it really is just time management. Like I know all the things I want to do. Like I want to get my workout in. I want to get my live streams in. I want to even have time to come and do shows with people like you. Like I do kind of mentally build that in. And so I just can't waste time. I literally can't waste time. And some people think I'm crazy because I have everything on my calendar. Like this is what I'm doing this 30 minutes, but it's the only way I can get everything done I want to get done while still being a good dad, while still getting to do all the stuff. So it really is just an exercise in maniacal time management.
Which, I mean, is still so important when you're, I mean, and you enjoy what you do. I think that's the other thing too, is you enjoy so much of what you do where it's like, I don't want to have to trim back on any of this and I want to get it all done. And it's fun. I get to create and engage with an audience every day. So yeah, I think that's got to be hypercritical for what you do.
For sure.
All right. Yeah, sorry, on the clock. We can come back and wrap up thoughts on that.
Is AD Mitchell still here?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I pulled him up here. So when you have Richardson, you kind of have this nice setup to where, because we were prioritizing other positions for a while there, we do still want to get our stacks. We still want upside wide receiver profiles. So between AD Mitchell and Josh Downs, we have basically two cracks at it. And yeah, we had to reach a little bit for AD Mitchell, but my ideal version of an Anthony Richardson team would be to get both of them because we didn't have Pittman. And there isn't a lot else to like on this Colts team other than AD Mitchell and Josh Downs. So I kind of like the idea. You reach a little bit on Mitchell, you try to lock up Downs as well. And now we got a double stack in addition to our 4 early wide receivers.
No 18th round Jelani Woods for you. No.
Doesn't seem great over there for Jelani Woods. I know people love him, but it seems like a 4-way tight end rotation.
There was like a 2 weeks or like a week stretch where it was like Jelani Woods, best shape of his life kind of vibes coming out in news reports. And Jelani, you might forget about Brock Bowers when you hear about Colts tight end Jelani. I pulled up a tweet about it. It was like, all I did was type in Jelani Woods to the Google search bar and like instantly it was like 3 of the check marks of like, all right, yep. Don't think I want to put too many chips in on Jelani Woods this year. And I think this is another
that's why we're so into elite tight end, right? It's like you want to be in on elite tight end so you're not forced to figure out who the Colts tight end is.
Right. And Adam Levitan over at Establish for Run too. I mean, he mentioned, last year seemed like a year where it was popular to do those 3 tight end builds. You get to that range this year, you're throwing blind darts and you have no clue if any of them are actually going to hit this year. So just go get your elite one and forget about it. Running backs are kind of the plenty here. Tua's also there if you want to lock down quarterback and forget about it.
Yeah, check me on Downs' ADP though. This is where I don't see anything we have to have here. Yes, it's 10 picks. It's 10 picks ahead, but I don't think put them in the queue. Where do we pick next? What's our number? If you go to the board
we'll scroll 141.
Yeah, so he's not coming back. I think we lock up Josh Downs, and this is, Tua at ADP is just something I don't do. The Waddle drafter could certainly take him. Where is the Waddle drafter on the board? Is the Waddle drafter behind us?
Let me see here. Waddle is There we go.
So no.
Right, 110. Yeah. No.
And so what, and then go see what they don't have any quarterbacks. So yeah, they're probably going to take Tua, which is fine.
Yeah.
But now let's, we took Hopkins, so Levis is an
Yep.
option for us. And we can also build out a secondary stack if needed. But yeah, I think the slide on Richardson, and again, Richardson, because of how much rushing he does, he's a guy you don't have to force the double stack. And I know I kind of just
Mhm.
pushed us down that area, but the way ADPs line up, like you're not going to get both of them. And
No.
to me, like, because the costs on those two are still relatively cheap, both being double digit round picks, I think when Anthony Richardson hits in a way where he leaps into the Hurts and Allen tier is because he can actually toss a deep ball. And it's because they're hitting for big plays. And so can he drop 25 points on his own, just rushing and with his floor? Absolutely. But if he's having a 40-point game, it's because he's also connecting on some deep shots. And I think AD Mitchell and Josh Downs are the two best and most likely breakout candidates on that offense. So I love the way that works when you get Richardson.
And do you really like any of Jalen Polk, Gabe Davis, Mike Williams, Jahan Dotson enough to like, okay, well, I'll settle for them when they come back? It's like at the end of the day, let's just go out and grab the double stack. And now we don't even have to look at wide receiver because we've got 6 on the team already. We can focus on building out the running back room, shutting down the tight end position if we need to. But this is where we still have plentiful options ahead of us, especially as we're looking at the board with an Eckler at the top of Gabe Davis, a Justin Herbert, Marshawn Lloyd. Even though Camp Buzz hasn't been, AJ Dillon has been been still a pest. Only 3 running backs, handful at the top of the board here. Where's your leaning?
Yeah. So we could do a running back here. Leggett would also set up a back stack for us, but I think this does feel like it should be a running back pick. Eckler or
Yeah,
Lloyd or Chandler, I think, are all solid picks here.
I'm really coming. I'm gonna click Ty Chandler for us here. When I look at Austin Eckler, Marshawn Lloyd, and Ty Chandler in this range, I don't know if either Marshawn Lloyd or Austin Eckler maybe have as clear of a path to touches as maybe Ty Chandler does because of how flimsy and unreliable Aaron Jones hasn't played a full season. I believe it's been 5 years since he's played a full season, and all it takes is for him to have a bum ankle, and he might be out for 4 games in a Minnesota offense that is gonna need to try and run the football. They can't throw. It's like it's like the inverse of the Chargers, right? The Chargers have to throw at some point. Well, the Vikings also have to run the ball at some point. Then, so for
Yeah.
me, I'm very okay taking the shot on Ty Chandler there. As like, yeah, he's not going to get any reps, but I also don't think he's going to be a 0 for me. And all it takes is for him to fill in for Aaron Jones on the right week. When we're looking at another potential top 12 running back on our team.
Yeah. I can see pass for all of those guys. I mean,
Sure.
Ty Chandler is probably there's the most we kind of know what his role looked like last year in a similar setup. We know the team likes him, didn't really bring in a ton of other depth there. Lloyd, I do like a lot. I have been
Yeah.
buying the dip on Eckler. It's basically just what if we're all completely wrong about Eckler? What if his rushing inefficiency was because he was hurt? You do see some of the training stuff with Eckler, and that guy wants it so bad. So if he is
Yeah.
fully back, so I do love the idea of either. I'm torn because I think Leggett really helps us open up another late stack,
Yeah.
or Lloyd. I'm good with either of those guys. I
I'm
kind of
just
lead Leggett. The one thing to remember is because we have the week 14 bye with the Colts, a lot of the other fun late stacking options, namely the Broncos and the Patriots, have the same bye, which
yeah.
complicates Drake May. So by doing this, we now open up Bryce Young and Levis as really strong pairs. And if we get sniped on one of them, we just have an extra out and we're not having to panic backdoor stack.
Oh, and I think I like more as we get to the later rounds. I tend to like more of the 16th, 17th, 18th round running back shots than I do the wide receivers in that range as well. So as much as you're right, as much as I think I would have loved Marshawn Lloyd on the comeback there, if we do lose out on Will Levis, if we lose out on any other quarterback that, again, God forbid, a Bo Nix, and we got to take a Troy Franklin as well, a Greg Dulcich, whatever it is, that's another option for us in, an offense that should be better under Dave Canales if he's still this quarterback whisperer that of the last 2 years.
For sure. And, the other thing I think about, sometimes I have this same team and it's, a 0 RB build, right? Where I didn't take HN. We took, I don't even know who it was. Maybe we took Evans there or something. And then this is just obviously a running back pick. We need the extra running back. But because we were kind of thin at wide receiver, we then took the 2 Colts. And then to me, it's like, all right, we need to build out some more upside in our wide receiver room. We want to build out some outs for more stacks because we only have 1 quarterback. And I do just tend to like how my teams turn out if I give myself a few options, and you feel like the player pool shrinking a little bit. Because like I said, do I love the Patriot stacks? Do I love the Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin? But it's like, I don't know. This isn't a team we can do a Bo Nix and have those 2 quarterbacks with the same bye week.
Which is always the headache too. Cause there are so many teams. It seems like more this year with that week 14 bye, which is like, how have you navigated that? When actually building out your teams, because you look at it's Houston and Baltimore that also have that bye. You've got New England and the Broncos, who are popular late round stacks, who also have that bye. Are those like game stacks you typically avoid altogether? Obviously you mix them in, but especially like a Baltimore Houston one, as much as it's nice to have the Lamar Andrews stack and then mix in some Houstons, how much do you boil in? Well, I also need a solid week 14 if I'm going to make the finals week 15th or 17th.
Yeah, I keep tabs on bye weeks. Like, I don't want to stack have a team that has like 6 or 7 plus players from the same bye week, which does get tough with week 14 because there's so many fun teams playing there. I guess I should reframe that. I don't want to have 6 or 7 bye weeks from my top 10 rounds. I'm a little more open to it if they're my late guys. Like if you have a bunch of, you're tacking on Devontae Walker and Troy Franklin and these rookies who are late have the same bye week. Okay. But if a bunch of your early studs have it, like your team is going to bottom out that week. And that could potentially be you hemorrhaging 30, 40, 50 points relative to these other teams. And yes, in a single, pod, maybe that doesn't kill you. But if you do that over and over again, like that's certainly going to hurt.
Handful of tight ends. Adam Thielen, we just took Leggett. Levis would make it around, but there's also a ton of quarterbacks still sitting here too.
Ray Davis is one of my favorite running back picks. This is right at ADP. I think he's an awesome selection. We don't have anything for Jets correlation, I don't think, but I have no problem with adding him to this room. And it's kind of like you think about those 2v2s, right? We passed on Lloyd. I don't know what wide receiver we would have potentially taken here, like Lloyd versus whoever, or Leggett versus Ray Davis. I really like the Leggett Ray Davis. You can see here the wide receivers got wiped. And so I think grabbing the end of that kind of tier set us up well.
All right, exactly. Just like we talked about, right? It's like I'd rather take a shot on the running backs at this point than having to scroll too far down too early just to feel like I need to build out my wide receiver room as well. And there's still, I know you're a Bucky Irving fan. He's still on the board, but these quarterbacks too. As much as we've been talking about Will Levis, it'll be interesting to see once we get back to our pick. How far can we potentially even push these quarterbacks, a full round if there's 4 or 5 of them still sitting ahead of Will Levis here, especially how this room has been reaching too. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see if Daniel Jones or someone who, well, there isn't really a Deontay Johnson owner, reaches down for a Bryce Young then.
Yeah, let's scroll through our team again just to have a refresher here.
Richardson, Achane, Zamir White, Mostert, Chandler Davis, Reek Devonta, T. Hopkins, Colts wide receivers, Leggett, and then Trey McBride as well.
Yeah, so we're, literally the only thing that I'm starting to think about here is Levis goes. See, that's wild. Yeah. So I am like, yeah. I don't mind grabbing one more running back and being done. We could also just take Thielen if we want to set up a double stack
with Young.
Bryce, but I'm good with either of those plays.
I'll well, let's go Bucky on the off chance. Again, we can correlate. I mean, not that it's a massive correlation with Carolina and Leggett, but
Yeah,
I also know you're a big Bucky Irving guy.
I am. Yeah,
So sell me on Bucky Irving, because so Minnesota native, got to see Bucky Irving play at the U of M for the early part of his collegiate career. Obviously dominated once he went to Oregon, but give me your pro Bucky Irving take, because I think I might be a little less optimistic, but I'm like I'm also not so set in my opinion that I'm open to having my mind changed.
Yeah, and I'll say just structurally here, the reason I was torn, there were kind of a pro and a con for Bucky. The pro was he's a week 17 correlation there. The con is, I think we were kind of fine at 5 running backs, at least there. I think we kind of had a pick to play with essentially. And we kind of used our luxury pick on that 6th running back. I'm not a film bro here on Bucky Irving, but he is. So the guys I often like to bet against, and it is both Ray Davis and Bucky Irving, is the kind of dead zone backs where there's a little ambiguity and shakiness to their profile. Like if James Cook was a 3-down back, he'd be going in the 2nd round. If Rachaad White was a better rusher, a more explosive rusher, he'd be going in the 2nd round. So there's these warts and these holes to their profile. And then the team goes in and spends, you don't want to say significant capital. It's all on a curve, right? Like teams aren't taking running back super early these days. I would still consider the Ray Davis and Bucky Irving picks significant capital relative to what teams spend on other positions. And so then that begs the question, like, what are these guys brought in to do? And in the case of Bucky Irving, I think the door is open for him to take some of that early down rushing work. I think Rachaad White's a great pass catcher. I don't think Rachaad White is going to let go of that role easily, but Bucky Irving can catch passes too. And I think both Ray Davis and Bucky Irving kind of have that sneaky all around skill set to where at the very least, the worst case scenario is these guys are like, just pure contingent handcuffs. And guess what?
Yep.
That's fine at this price. We've seen multiple years where Alexander Madison got 2 to 3 spot starts behind Dalvin Cook, and he paid off a 13th, 12th round tag. If these guys just get a couple of spot starts and give us what Zach Charbonnet did last year in a couple of spot starts, which was 15, 16 points, that's a great pick. Any standalone value is gravy. Ray Davis could be the goal line back. Bucky Irving could have some of the standalone value role. And if there's any standalone value, they are an absolute smash. So there's my selling point on the Ray Davis and James Cook, or Ray Davis and Bucky Irving.
Well, and I think you bring up a valuable point too, is in best ball especially, all we need is one thing to break right. And I think sometimes we need to continue to separate, not fully separate, but in best ball, Bucky Irving is probably a far better pick than a redraft team, right? Like, I don't know if anybody's going to tell you to go out and draft Bucky Irving as a handcuff in your deep redraft league. But in a best ball, you're right. All we need is 1-2 productive weeks out of him. And all of a sudden, we have a spot start when Devon Achane is out for 2 weeks with an ankle, whatever it is. All about finding ambiguity and running towards it, as Josh Norris would say. I'm pretty upset because Bryce Young also got taken there. So we're getting SOL here on our quarterback stack, so we could potentially take here.
Yeah, go to quarterback here so I can look at this. So Daniel Jones is a good one. I also think Derek Carr with Jawan Johnson is also a good one. Those would be the 2 I would try to set up.
Yeah, how far down do we have until Jawan 202? So we could force that if we really wanted to. Let's go.
Do Derek Carr. We have the Zamir White week 17. We can use that as a correlation. Obviously, the Giants and Indy play in week 17, but we could also get. I actually wrote about this guy for the Fantasy Life newsletter tomorrow. Like Theo Johnson is getting a ton of hype right now.
On a buzz.
Yeah, so that could be a really good kind of tight end flyer as well if we happen to get sniped on Jawan Johnson. And now we can kind of decide, we're for sure taking one more tight end, right? Like we know that. And then we have a third pick that I think could be a third tight end or a third quarterback, basically. And we can kind of just decide how we want to play that.
Which, and there's a plethora. there's a plethora of tight ends. I'd be perfectly fine taking shots on in this range too, or yeah, if we need to take a third quarterback as well, we can definitely look into that. So at this point here, you're looking at 196 of just taking Juwan Johnson and locking that down.
I think so. I think Jawan Johnson got too cheap. You know, everyone was worried about the injury, which was perfectly valid. And then they said, hey, he's on a good timeline, expected to be back week 1. And it's like, okay, well, the ADP never bounced back. And so,
Right.
you know, I think Jawan Johnson should probably be going, you know, right after Noah Fant, like in that range. And now we're getting a pretty big discount on him. And I know the Derek Carr stuff, it's not sexy, it's not fun, but these are the things we have to think through with our backdoor stacks. It's like, okay, we do
Right.
need another tight end. We have already burned most of our wide receiver spots. So we got to find a quarterback that also can stack with the tight end. So I do like that here. And Daniel Jones does go. So this sets up well.
Yep, this sets up well. Made the right call there, which I'm very okay with. And again, we don't match up with the week 14 by Mageddon. There is what it'll probably be deemed this year. We're still good at tight end as well. So yeah, no, I am excuse me, all for that as well. All right, this is the range where we're gonna 18th round on the horizon here. Again, I brought up that screenshot you posted earlier of all right, we're really getting into the scroll the F down range here. How far? It's a popular question. How far down is too far down when you're scrolling the F down?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a fun time because just in the past week, I think some smart scroll the F down targets have started to pop up, you know, and I don't think there was a lot of smart ones before. Like I wasn't scrolling down a ton. You know, the past couple days I've taken Jordan Whittington on some shows.
Yep.
I do think like the Jawar Jordan stuff
Yeah.
is interesting with how much buzz he's getting. I think looking at the spots where are people, you know, overcome. So like another good one, again, I don't really want to invest in the Steelers, but this is more just an example. It's like Roman Wilson has been getting drafted in every draft. He's now banged up. The beat reporters barely pretended they knew who he was a little bit ago. And there's lots of talk that like Calvin Austin has been like the best guy at camp. Roman Wilson drafted in 100% of these. Calvin Austin drafted in sub 5%. You know, Jermaine Burton drafted in nearly 100% of these. Andre Yoshivas, who's now everyone's darling, still only drafted, you know, in less than 10%. So I am looking for those spots. I still don't like, I'm not forcing it, right? Like on this team, the thing I'm thinking about right now are what are some correlations? We have this New Orleans stack with the Zamir White bring back. We have our Indy stack, and we don't have anyone on the Giants. And I think there's two really good Giants that could make sense for us. I think Jalen Hyatt, who's having a really good camp,
Yep.
who's not drafted in 100% of these. I think he could work if we want to go receiver, or Theo Johnson, another Giant, and we get a third tight end. I think both of those would be kind of who I would be zeroing in on here.
I'm good with the Theo Johnson pick, honestly. Mostly because he's a guy I don't have any exposure to, and again, when I mean, you brought it up early when we were talking about a Trey McBride, right? I mean, if it's one of those guys who goes for a 15, 16, 17 point week in the latter half of the season, when we could start to see Theo Johnson start to emerge more in that offense, I am all for taking that shot in the 18th round, because who else are you going to take? I mean, Javon Baker is like my toxic love in the 18th round. I can't help but draft him if he makes it back to me. But I mean, you're really going to bet on a Greg Dortch, on I guess as Andre continues to rise, on a Zay Jones, right? Like at that point, it is kind of a call your shots, and I would much rather take the shot on the youth with the upside than a vet like a Zay Jones or a Greg Dortch, despite that may just being a correlation pick for some people as well.
Yeah, let me look at our wide receiver room again.
Yep.
We're at 7. We had the 4 early with Hopkins. Then we get the 2 stacks with the 2 stack guys with AD Mitchell and Josh Downs, and then we have Xavier Legette. I think my like gut says like this team slightly needs another wide receiver more than the tight end, but I do think it's pretty close. I think if it were me, I'd probably lean toward Hyatt, but I think Theo is perfectly viable as well.
I will throw them both in the queue, but I would agree with you. I really do like the 2682 build this year. And if you really lock up running back early, I'm perfectly fine going 5 as well, depending on your running back room. But with having maybe a little bit flimsier of a running back room with the the injury risk that both Miami Dolphins kind of run, I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay building out 6 there. But I
Yeah.
would agree. I would lean probably wide receiver here, as much as we just talked about liking Theo Johnson as well.
Yeah. And I just think with Trey McBride and then Juwan, even if Juwan starts the season slow, McBride can cover us for a few weeks. And then that tight end room, once Juwan's out there, is perfectly viable. It's just the two. I think the one thing that was a bummer was the Levis snipe.
Yeah.
And then, kind of Bucky was just, we did get the correlation, which was nice. But like, if we get Levis, then maybe we get to do Jalen McMillan as the wide receiver thing. And then we're not forced into, the wide receiver, the last. I think it could have broke slightly more clean, but these are the kind of, situations you have to navigate. And it goes back to, we tried to build out 2 stacks, with the Leggett pick to give us 2 cracks at Levis and Bryce. We didn't get either of them. We stayed cool. Right. We avoided the bye weeks. This team would not have worked if we had only given ourselves an out to the Drake May or Bo Nix, because then we would have had 2 quarterbacks with the same bye week. So I think we navigated it well, and we still built in, some really nice stacks and week 17 correlations with it, and on top of some nice ADP value.
Right. And I was just going to say, I mean, to start off with ADP values as well. I mean, getting the break on Tyreek, Achane right around ADP, Devonta Smith, I believe he was slightly after ADP, but especially the slide on T Higgins, the slide on Anthony Richardson, almost got the slide on Ridley, but I'll take the consolation prize as D Hop there. And yeah, like you said, I think intentionally building out the stacks, intentionally not over prioritizing week 17, but still adding enough in there for it to matter for this team to catch a break in the final week where all the money is won. Grade A through F, B plus.
Yeah, I think I think B plus is solid. Like, I think this was headed to being an A because of the ADP value we were getting early, and we just had like the cleanest landing kind of blown up, and so we had to scramble, which knocks it just a bit. But I still think this is a really strong team.
I 100% agree with that. Well, again, if you want to catch more best ball content, Pete Overzet is the guy you absolutely need to go watch. He is streaming. I mean, you're basically streaming every day. Maybe it's best for you to say, yeah, I have best ball breakfast on Mondays, and I write all. I'll give you a chance to plug whatever you want here, Pete. But you pump out so much content. You have such a thriving community over on your YouTube channels as well. It'd be a shame if those who are watching this aren't already tuned into that and they want to start getting into best ball more. So one more time, where can the people find you? And maybe I'll ask you this too. Which one's your favorite to stream as well, record?
I mean, I do love Best Ball Breakfast. That's kind of, ever since I started streaming best ball drafts, I remember it started with that kind of like Monday morning slot. I always look forward to it, starting the new week. And then, last year I kind of did, I had separated it into 2 chunks. I was doing some Monday, some Wednesday. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do one mega stream on Mondays. And I love it because I do a solo stream. So I kind of get to scratch that itch. I do one with Pat Crane, obviously, who won BBM3, my co-host on Ship Chasing, super sharp. And then Sean Siegel from Rotoviz, who's just this outside of the box thinker, has really strong player takes and a really, people sometimes think he has wild ideas, but his process is so consistent, what he's trying to doing. Like, he will not compromise if he doesn't think he's taking a player that can smash their ADP. And so I get a lot of different variety there. And then I've been rotating the 4th guest. And, sometimes it's someone like JJ, who's becoming a best ball bro. The past few shows, I've had some fun with guests who aren't as deep in the best ball streets, Cooter Doodle from Fantasy Life and Roto
That was a phenomenal one.
Yeah, those are more just like a pure comedy exercise. So I think that's what I love about it. It's kind of like this variety hour. I get to do a solo, draft some smart teams with smart people, and also have a bit of fun.
Yeah, and that is over on your I don't want to call it your main YouTube channel, but Peter Overzet. That is linked down in the description of the YouTube stream you are watching. You're over Peter Overzet's Deposit Kingdom as well, and like you said, that's a little bit more structured content, but is super digestible. If you just want easy strategy, if you want easy tips, but also mixed in with a little bit of the the stuff that sharps have an itch for as well. I mean, that is another place you can find Pete as well. That is down in the description as well. Anything fantasy life coming up that you want to plug as well? I know they're great friends of ours from last year as well. You got the free newsletter you're typing up. You said anything else that people can look forward to over there?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a bunch going. We got our free draft kit up there. We did just launch Fantasy Life Plus. So a lot of our premium stuff, we have this draft champions tool, which is pretty cool. Like if you are in these home leagues and you have kind of weird settings and you want to do mock drafts, like you can create or input your unique settings. Like you could have something like it's 8 points per, rushing attempt. And it's like, well, you can go put that in and see how the players in our ranks are shifting around. So highly recommend that. And yeah, just a ton of great content. Like I said, I'm going to be doing the daily newsletter Monday through Friday, and then, in season be ramping that up as well. So yeah, I would keep tabs on Fantasy Life. Most of the stuff is still free. Just some of those premium tools now, but still really cheap. I think it's like sub $10 a month for the entire suite of the utilization and all those tools.
You all don't watch that much on Hulu anyways. You can go flip that subscription over to Fantasy Life over there. Look, he's a best ball bro. He's a best ball grinder. He's a family man. He's a fun guy as well. Pete Overzet. Really appreciate the time, man. Had a blast doing this with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I think this was a solid team, and yeah, good luck with the rest of your drafts.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. We'll be back next Wednesday as well. We'll be streaming. We'll go back to our normal 7 Eastern time. So make sure you're subscribed, turn on those notifications as well. If you're not signed up for Underdog yet, you can use code FELLAS over there if you haven't seen it scrolling across the bottom of your screen for the last hour. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. See y'all next week. Deuces.